Welcome to Football Manager Thoughts, a podcast about thoughts on Football Manager, and I am here with Saint Grimmy. How are you doing?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
I'm alright, yeah. It's been a long hard day, but I'm doing fine. Grimmy is a Football Manager streamer, a YouTuber of many different things, a podcaster. You're a man of many bow. I can't get this right. You either say strings to your bow or arrows in your quiver. You've got to pick one or the other. I'm going with arrows in the quiver. I think you're firing out.
Arrows in the quiver, yeah. So I'll go with that one. Yeah.
Firing out, F1 content, FIFA content, Football Manager content, all over the show, aren't you?
Well, that's how I've been described by many people as being all over the shop. So yeah, that kind of fits perfectly, really. Yeah.
All over the shot. He's firing all those arrows, and they're all missing. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, definitely.
No, you're someone whose content I really enjoy, and your approach and your thoughts, and you were kind enough to invite me on your podcast, so it's lovely to be returning the favour on this episode that is focusing on FM24 and the features and how we're feeling about it, and hopefully we're going to have a good time looking at that.
Absolutely.
So I suppose my first question for you, because I happen to know that you've been away, is Are you up to date on the features, or are you kind of catching up? And because they've all just suddenly splurged out in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's a bit different to what it was last year when there was that 40-minute dissertation video of not very much being said, where everything's sort of all come at once, and it's been sort of hard to keep track. But over the past few days, since I've been more up with PC, I've been able to look at stuff on YouTube and see what people have been thinking, and then obviously looking at the actual features site as well on FM, because they've obviously got a bit more of a breakdown on there as well. I was actually watching a YouTube video. It's about 8 minutes on the FM's actual channel, and they actually do quite a good job of just in about 8 minutes just like flicking through the main things. So yeah, pretty up to date on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting that, I think you're right, that they really underplayed FM24 and said, the big one's going to be FM25. But I do find it fascinating how we'll never know what happened behind the scenes. But the jump from FM22 to 23 was not great. There was some stuff, but not a lot. The community kind of rioted. They just dumped that 40-minute video. It was very odd. It was like everything went to shit behind the scenes for FM23. It's been much more polished and professional and interesting to see FM24 go out. Forgot about that. They just did this one long video, didn't they? And then that was it. Right, there you go. That's FM23.
Yeah, done, dusted, bish, bash, bosh. Yeah, it was all sort of done in one long, not very interesting video. I know they did sort of split it up into segments and stuff, but it seemed to not necessarily intentional, but it just seemed to be a lot of waffle over very little content, if that makes sense. So yeah, it was an interesting one, and certainly the thing that sticks out in my mind about when they revealed FM23, that was the thing that sort of stuck in my mind, really. Yeah. And
there were positives to the game, and I know that me and you are not on the sort of rioting side of the FM community, and
no,
there were good things about FM23, but I definitely think the theme I've seen with FM24 is people being pretty excited about these features. What's the one in your mind that you're looking at and thinking that's the most interesting one?
I mean, for me, as a guy that loves the summer transfer window and loves any sort of transfer wheeling and dealing, I think all the sort of smarter transfers, the intermediary stuff, all that sort of jimbo jambo, the more intricacies with the transfers probably interest me the most, because I think most of this, I'm one of those guys that it takes a while for me to find the right save where I'll spend the sort of tens, hundreds of hours playing one specific save. And usually I have about 5 or 10 different saves where I'll be running through the summer transfer window, doing all that stuff and sort of trying to build the squad. And then my mind goes, no, I'm not feeling this one. I'll go to a new one, or I'll stick with it, and then I'll sort of try and build it from there. I mean, there's so many different things. And I think that's the thing that surprised me the most. But I think definitely the transfers are where it's at for me. And there was one particular bit where it seems like the AI is going to be a lot smarter, like the opposition managers are going to be transferring a lot smarter. So you're not going to see Real Madrid buy 5 different world-class strikers and then not play any of them. Should be more interesting if that pulls off the way they're describing it.
I suppose there's a chance here that somebody's listened to this podcast and they haven't delved deep into all of the things that have been released. So just running through them, you've started there kind of with the first one that they announced, which is this thing about smarter transfers, changes to the finances, changes to the AI with squad building, So that's all that stuff around better AI making better transfers, bit more flexibility in the transfer market for the player, changing reputations in the league, affecting sponsorships for the league as a whole, like almost like an overhaul of how transfers work.
Yeah.
Linked to that is those intermediaries where you can hire people to help you get players out of the club. They take a cut to facilitate a move for unwanted players. Then you've got the targets you can set players, which seems to be about like really building on that player pathway that's been in the last couple of games, setting targets on players, including those on loan. And then, as you say, the list goes on, like better motion, new position, inverted fullback, massive improvements in the textures of the game, like just kind of how it looks. Then you get to the set piece creator, the new attribute for coaches around set pieces. We've just learnt today that the attributes for coaches will now show whether they're going up or down, like they do for a player, which is really cool. And there's the transfer window thing, like where you've now got the choice to have 3 different ways to start the game, which again is really cool. Like it's some bulky stuff. Like it's not a complete revolution, but yeah, and that's before you get into some of these smaller ones that I don't know about you, but like some of the really small things that you don't necessarily think about. Those
like
are the ones that make the most difference.
The quality of life stuff that we've been talking about today. Yeah, like for me, again, I've not really been sort of in the camp of sort of FM creators for too long. I've only really been in it the past couple of years. So knowing like what the big sort of changes have been over the past sort of 5-6 years, I couldn't really tell you. But this definitely feels like more intricate in terms of the gameplay improvements. There isn't sort of necessarily a major thing. I know everyone's sort of harkening on about the set pieces and really excited about that, but I think I'm just excited more or across the board, because it seems to be like more parts of it are being touched upon now, rather than it just being sort of, well, there's this one specific bit that everyone wants to get improved, but we're actually going to improve in various areas. So yeah, for me, that's where I think I'm most excited about it, really.
Yeah. And this is like a common theme as well, which is that the features from last year seem to have been tightened up in response to maybe some of the feedback as well. So on this a blog that's about, it's the blog on one of the deep dive sort of blogs, and it's talking about things like the squad planner. They're calling it like, the revamped squad planner. That's going to work better, because the squad planner is something that in theory I was vaguely interested in, but I found myself still doing it on a spreadsheet because I don't love it. And also it leads to ridiculous stuff like if you choose not to update your squad planner, then your assistant manager will be like, this guy isn't on the squad planner, you should transfer list him. And it's like, but he's 5-star, he starts every game, he's scored 100 goals, like what? And it's like, what, your squad planner says you don't want him. And it's like, and I'm just kind of reading through some of this stuff about like how it's taking into account contracts better, and like it sounds like it might take a bit of getting used to, but that actually it will be a little bit better. Things, even things like the national team pool being, that's changed. One of my big hopes was that we'd get a better, more improvements to international management than we're getting, but at least we're getting some stuff around making the national team pool make more sense and that kind of thing. So, but yeah, there just seems to be across the board, when they say, I know it's a bit of a PR thing, it's the most complete version of the game, it does seem like, rather than right, we're just going to bolt on the development center or something, it seems like they've almost gone through every section of the game and gone, right, well, what bits do we need to polish up in this area and this area and this area?
Yeah. Of course, I think obviously the proof will be in the pudding, as they say, when the game comes out. But I think I was listening to Lujo talking about the improvements and talking about obviously FM24 and 25. I think he was saying it on the Football Manager Therapy podcast, where it was like he generally feels, and I feel after seeing what they're implementing, that 24 is probably going to be the most polished version of it, because 25 you're going to have all of these bells and whistles with the new engine and all, obviously the graphics, and then the women's league coming in, and all the women's side of it coming in, I should say. So it's like those are probably going to be the main bells and whistles that come in, and probably going to be the only things really, because I can't exactly see them building much more than that for next year. So I do think 24 has a lot going for it in terms of what it's shown so far, and if it pulls it off, in terms of it working relatively stably, because I know 23 is sort of one of those ones that I think people will probably think it was just a bit of a burning wreck, really, at times, in terms of how it played. I mean, I still enjoyed it, don't get me wrong. Like, I've never played a Football Manager game and not enjoyed it, but I could see the faults where they were there with 23. But I think if 24 can pull off these improvements, then it is definitely going to be one of the ones that I think the community will probably look more favourably on than last year's, which is, I think, what SI in general and the community in general is desperate for, really.
Yeah, there's definitely... I mean, it's interesting that SI have acknowledged that there were problems with FM23. I think we touched on this a little bit when you interviewed me for the Unbelievable Streams podcast, but like, it's not like they're working on FM25 now and then they're going to turn it around in 6 months and release it. There's a huge lag. So it's interesting that they've kind of... I don't know how I feel about it, but there's definitely things that are broken in FM23, and I certainly think that the fact that you can... This, again, a feature that we haven't mentioned, but it's pretty significant. You can move your saves over. Mm-hmm. And we've got the J-League. I didn't even mention that. But, like, anyway, moving on. The fact that you can move your saves over definitely suggests to me... I think they abandoned FM23. I think the problems that are... There are things in FM23 that just fundamentally don't work. And I think they thought, well, you can move your saves over to FM24. We're going to take a risk on publicly admitting FM23 was a bit rubbish and just make FM24 really solid. Because stuff like the fact that Reputation was just broken, and it's always been iffy. Like build a nation for really small leagues has always been iffy, but it seemed particularly bad. And I know, like, I don't know if you followed any of what Game Legend was doing in Iceland with IBV, but, like, you know, making the Champions League last 16 and not seeing any improvement in reputation or attendances, like,
yeah,
that I don't remember that being a problem in FM21, FM22. Like, that was an FM23 thing that was broken. And on the one hand, I want to be like, it's not great to release a game that either you knew or you figured out later was broken, but then I suppose if we get this FM24 is the sort of culmination, crowning achievement, complete version of this iteration of the game, and as you say, the proof's in the pudding. But if we don't see any of those kind of pretty horrendous game-breaking things in there that can, for a particular type of, quite niche, but a particular type of save, kind of ruin it completely, if we don't see that sort of stuff, then it's probably a risk that's paid off.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think they did get a bit of respect. I don't know if respectability is the right word, but there was definitely a bit of a nod of approval, I think, from most of the community in the fact that they put that comment out there saying, like, look, we acknowledge it wasn't great, this is what we're doing, this is the plan, sort of thing. And I think most people are happy when there is that communication there and people are just upfront about things and say, look, it didn't pan out the way we wanted it to, and obviously put their hands up and not necessarily apologise, but, you know, acknowledge that it wasn't as good as it needed to be. I think, unfortunately, the way the gaming industry is at the minute, I think a lot of companies just throw the product out there before it's really done, or maybe is at the point it should be at before general sort of release. And I know, obviously, Football Manager is infamous with its 2-week early access and things like that, but there's 2 weeks early access and then tweaking a few things to fix things, and then there's releasing something that's sort of half-baked and sort of broken. But I think that's just a comment mainly on the gaming industry as a whole, because there's a lot of games out there that shouldn't have seen the light of day 6 months before they were even released, let alone actually get a full release on them. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if 24 does pan out like they're hoping to. I'm suspecting with the amount of stuff that's in there, it more than likely will, but again, we'll have to wait and see.
Some of it may be broken, like some of it may take time. I mean, that's the other thing, it's a very complicated game, and I suppose you have more, and one of the things that's interesting having you on is because you do genuinely make lots of different content about lots of different games and follow the release of lots of games, so you're kind of bringing that kind of wider industry insight. We forget, I think, as well, that Sports Interactive is not entirely independent. It's a little bit at the beck and call of Sega, I think, and others. So it's you know, it retains its independence in some ways, but it still will be under pressure to hit that release date. You know, I don't recall them ever doing what I've seen a few games companies do and just be like, yeah, we can't get this ready, it's going to come out in 6 months' time. You just can't do that with a game, a yearly sports game. You can't say. You just kind of have to release it and take the hit, because they couldn't release FM24 or whatever in February because they needed another 4 months on it. They just have to release it with less features or whatever.
Well, I think that's the problem with sports games as a whole, really, is that it is beholden to the fact that they have to release every year, because people say they wouldn't necessarily play it every year, but people do buy it just solely for the updated kits, skins, names, teams, leagues, whatever it is. And I think that's a big problem with sports games, is that they don't necessarily get that time in comparison to other games in the market, where they'll get 2-3 years of development and be able to add a bunch of things on. But again, that's sort of the route that sports games have taken. Whether it changes in the future, I highly doubt it, because again, sports games are a big moneymaker, and it's one of the more popular game genres out there. So yeah, again, it's hard to know if that'll ever change, but I think that if people went the way of, look, this isn't sort of a full update, but then sort of went down to like, this is sort of a half price thing, because there are a few different bits in it, but it's not like a full release. Similar to what it's eFootball now, but it was Pro Evolution Soccer did, sort of in between when they were jumping from the full release to the free to play. They did a sort of midway point, and it was only like £20 or something. So I don't know if that'll ever become a thing, but again, it's hard to see that because there is such pressure from the powers that be to have something out every year, especially in the sports genre. So
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, how does it compare to other games? Like, obviously there's been a lot of change with FIFA this year. It's EAFC, is it? Has that, in your experience of various iterations of FIFA and I suppose this one, is it a similar picture? Is it a better picture?
It's a strange one, because generally with FIFA it's year by year, and if they try to implement new things, sometimes it can go a bit wrong, and then they have to sort of revert back to type with updates and things like that. But this year it generally tends to be, it seems a bit more stable. I don't know if that's because they've had maybe a year or two coming up to this one, and they knew it was going to be the first one under sort of the EA banner, or the FC banner as they're calling it. So yeah, I think with that, in that particular instance, it's been a pretty good launch for them, because it's been out a couple of weeks now, and it seems to have been working pretty well. I think when I look at other sports games, like the golfing games, like the EA released a golf game earlier this year. That was a little bit of a drab experience, because it was literally, there was a career mode and it was sort of fully fleshed out, but that was all there was to it. And it was sort of like, once you'd done your first sort of 5-10 hours, that was it really. And obviously with games like FM, you're playing tens, if not hundreds of hours of them, or thousands of hours in some people's cases that I know make content every year. So it's like, if it doesn't work, you're not going to get the longevity that you would normally get out of FM, because FM is one of those games you can either sit there for 4 or 5 hours, or you can flip it on for half an hour. Though what maniac only plays FM for half an hour, I don't know. So yeah, like I think it's one of those things where year by year it tends to vary so greatly in terms of the quality and also the end product, because of that yearly release window. So I'm hoping, I think from what I've seen so far, I get the feeling that 24 will be a better release for SI, and then it'll be, I think all eyes will turn after the sort of initial period as to see what 25 is going to look like, because everyone always starts looking at the next thing, don't they? So
for me personally, like the addition of women's football for 25, like that's enough of a feature for me, so it kind of takes the pressure off. I do wonder, as you were saying, with what Lucia was saying, I think there is a risk that we will lose some features when we move over to 25, and that will be interesting to see how that happens, or what happens with it. I can't work out whether the change is going to be far more than what people expect, or if we've got it in our minds that there's going to be a huge shift in 25, and in reality we'll still open it up and be like, oh, the tactics, they're still here. And they've talked about it being on a different engine. They've kind of suggested from some of the interviews that it will look radically different. I mean, I can't remember the word they used, but it was that level of like, whole game will look different. And I'm sort of thinking, cool, but how? How are you going to make it look different?
You want to know, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah, are we like ultimately we're still presumably gonna have like a tactics board where you put the players. You're still gonna have like attributes. I mean, like even FIFA and things like that have attributes for the players. Like, I'm really fascinated to see what will happen, and I'm also fascinated to see how people respond to that, and whether, as I say, for me, like I'm not super critical of the game. I think maybe the match engine could look a little nicer. Like when the graphics, the way it's rendering the match engine in the graphics engine could look a little bit nicer. And I'm looking forward to women's football, and international management could be better. But like, I'm not sitting here having played this game for 10 years. I've played it for maybe like 5, thinking, oh, this is rubbish. It's really boring. It's a waste of money. I don't want to buy it. Like I'm pretty much happy with what I'm getting. So in some ways, FM24 is making me a bit nervous. FM25 is making me a little bit nervous because I'm like, ooh, I remember when I was trying to learn this game for the first time and how much of a nightmare it was to wrap my head around it. I don't want to have to relearn half the game because they've moved all the menus. So it'll be really interesting to see what will happen, and if we'll get a split of people being like, oh, I don't like change, versus people being like, oh, you promised change and you haven't delivered it. Like, it's just going to be fascinating.
Yeah, I think it is definitely a fascinating one because, again, the question is how much do they change and how much they sort of try to keep the same, and it's going to be a hard balance to keep. But for me, I think if they obviously put this new engine in and they say it's going to look different, it's going to have a new interface and all this stuff like they've mentioned before. For me, if they take away all, like if they do what almost FIFA's or EA has religiously done with FIFA in most like new console generations, and sort of almost go back to basics, I think people will be unhappy with that, and I think they know that, and it's almost pointless if they're going to do that to bring in these new features that they're doing now. So I do think while some things you might lose a little bit of intricacy here or there, I don't think the grand scheme of the game will be too different. I think just maybe how it looks, like the interface might be the main difference, and you might have to look somewhere a little bit different. Or I still think you'll have that panel on the left-hand side of tactics, you know, your staff, your club, all those general things. I think that'll all still be there. I just maybe how it operates because the engine might be a little bit different. I do think the graphics will be the main change alongside the women's football next year. But yeah, I'm in your camp as well of having a little bit of trepidation about it, where I'm a bit like, well, it'd be nice to have shinier graphics, but what's the cost of it? Like, what's it going to take away, if anything? So yeah, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and it's also when we talk about it might have a completely new feel. There's different ways that could happen. Like I've got Football Manager. I've actually got Football Manager 22 open right now, and you know, it would have taken me a long time. But when I was in school doing ICT, when would this have been? Like 2008, and using, I think it was called Dreamweaver to make web pages. I could create what I'm looking at now in 2008 Dreamweaver. Like, you know, I've got buttons on the side and they sort of highlight when you hover over them, and then you have a static click and it takes you to another page like a website. I wonder if some of those changes will be things like you see with the menus of things like FIFA, where it lifts off the screen more. Like, it might not even be that the menus are radically different. It might just be like when you click the tactics hub, you know, the menu on the side swooshes across the screen, and then it you know, or the you know, when you click on the when you click on the development hub or something, like the arrows aren't there already. You see them draw. You know, you see them draw the progress arrows. Just little things like that make it feel more like a video game and less like a spreadsheet or a website. That's possibly a direction that we might see, that might be able to be done in Unity, that wasn't as easy to do in this, or they didn't want to kind of overload the system that they've currently been using.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's exactly right with what you're saying there, JM. I think it's a case of, I think it'll get the glean, but I don't think it'll necessarily be a total reset. I think, like I said before, I think there is that balance it's got to make where it's got to be enough of a revolution, but not too much of a massive step away where it sort of alienates people. And I think that was the whole discussion, wasn't it, about the graphics and whether or not it was the right thing to do. Is it going to alienate a bunch of laptop users who maybe don't have the power to take in a shiny new engine or a new graphical update? or is it going to be able to work for those guys as well? It'll be interesting to see how they balance that, because I know a lot of people personally and obviously in the community who do just tend to play off the laptops or play touch or whatever. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it develops, and I get the feeling we'll probably see something a little bit earlier this year on 25 than we would normally do, because I don't think they'll leave it till that late. They'll want everyone to see what's going on, and sort of give everyone sort of a clearer indication. Might not be a full reveal, but you might get a bit more of a tease of it earlier. That's sort of my prediction for it, I think.
It's really interesting that because the argument has always been, well, they can improve the way the in-match graphics work, because as long as they still keep a 2D version, people on laptops can turn down the spec. I suppose if they are building it on a new engine and trying to bring more of that into just the static menus, that's where people's laptops may struggle. And it will be interesting to, but I say that I do wonder how many people are genuinely trying to run FM on toasters, because I just bought a new laptop for my my fiance, and the condition of it was that it had to run Minecraft fairly well, and I picked up something for 280 quid that can run Minecraft no problem whatsoever, and I would be baffled if FM25 can't also run on that laptop. So I am sort of sitting there being like, not everybody has 280 quid, but you don't have to buy a gaming laptop. Like, if you want to play FIFA or Call of Duty on the highest specs, or you want to run like a really meaty Total War game or whatever, then obviously, you will need to buy some kind of Alienware nonsense. But like, you can, like, the specs for Football Manager are really low, and actually stuff like the number of players in your database or whatever tends to be the thing that grinds the laptops down rather than the graphics. So it'll be interesting. I realise we spent half of a podcast talking about FM24, talking about FM25.
No, I knew, but that's the thing, isn't it? I think they're so interlinked because of that announcement. I think that was always going to happen, and everyone's talking about 24 coming out, but everyone's still got that eye on 25. And I don't think it would be like that if that announcement wasn't the way it was. Like, if they didn't mention 24 and then 25, and it was just solely, this is what we're doing for 24, I don't think people would be as bothered about looking at 25. But because they said this engine's coming in 25 that you've been asking for, everyone's sort of like one eye on the now and one eye on the future. So it was always bound to happen.
It's fascinating as well, because they didn't have to do that. I guess they made a calculated decision that the response to 23 was bad, and they have had years and years and years of people discussing the graphics of the game. But like, they could have just said, oh yeah, we announced women's football a few years ago, it's coming in FM25, and left it at that. It's interesting that they did go into the full, like, I don't know. I almost feel like, did they expect? Are we responding so well to the features because they played them down, or are we responding well to the features because they thought we'd respond worse than we have? If you know what I mean, like, they tried to lower the expectations. But I think I'm trying to think back to FM22 and FM21. This doesn't feel like a particularly fallow year for features compared to previous years. Like,
no, it feels like there's more. It feels like again, it'll be proof will be in the pudding if it actually turns out to be what they're saying. But I think it definitely feels like more since I first sort of came in and was like watching people on Twitch and YouTube and stuff over the past couple of years. The reaction to this has been a lot more positive, and I think there is general enthusiasm there. But yeah, I think going back to the question of, is it because they've played it down, or is it because of sort of the reaction to 23? I think it's a bit of column A and column B, and I think they both feed itself. Again, typical sitting on the fence maneuver from Grimmy again. But I think it's because you had the likes of Benji having that podcast with, is it Loki Doki and Work the Space and people like that, talking about the graphics and how poor FM23 was. I think because there was some of the bigger creators out there, or the biggest creators, had their problems with it and were very vocal and were sort of voicing what everyone was saying. I think it made SI sort of sit up and take notice of it a bit more, because there's always going to be people out there complaining about a product or complaining about some little intricacy of the game and maybe have to just get on with it a little bit. But when a lot of the bigger sort of content creators and a lot of people that give them sort of advertising of the game and give their views on the game a lot more are being overly negative or a bit more negative than usual, I think that makes them have to sort of steer the ship or correct the course a little bit. And I think that's sort of what they've done with that announcement, and obviously subsequently what they've done with FM24 and hopefully fingers crossed with FM25. So yeah.
And props to them, right? Like, I know we're probably like, we've lavished quite a lot of praise on Sports Interactive, but like, if you look at the wider games industry or even companies, charities, like, you know, in my job, I work in communications, I've had to deal with, you know, lots of trustees and directors. Like, it's incredibly rare these days that the response to criticism is to treat it as constructive and to as you say, sit up and listen. They could have easily, particularly with an organisation that is so under the kind of, Miles is a strong personality and a strong figurehead, they could have really doubled down on that and not listened and not taken it on board, and that would have been, I think, when you know, I know it's a low bar, but that's what you're used to seeing a lot in the games industry and in life.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So I think we are lucky that they have seemingly made efforts to respond and to try and adapt. And they're never going to please everyone, but like, things seem really positive now.
Fingers crossed that continues, because again, it's one of the rare examples, like you're saying, for that to be the case.
So I would like to ask you what your top 3 things are in the game. Little specific things. What are you the most kind of like, I'm going to use that, or I want to see how that plays out?
I'm interested in the whole starting mode. I can't remember which way. It's your world, and then the other 2 versions of it, where it's like you start with basically the teams as they are from day one, and then it's obviously like, but then the other modes where it's like the transfers happen if they haven't already happened in that date, sort of thing. I'm interested to see how that works, because I think that could be something not only people playing the game sort of play around with, but I think you could see a lot of different versions of like existing series and content creators and people like that could do stuff with that. I think it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. One way I actually thought to myself today when I was thinking about obviously what's coming into the game, one thing that would be pretty cool, I don't know, they won't do it this year, I don't think, but maybe in a future iteration they might, is if you could pick, like, say for example the game comes out in November 6th it comes out. It would be cool if, say for example, you could start the game on November 6th and the results be, and the league tables and performances and everything be exactly as they are from the real world. So say for example Man United are 6th in the table. They're not 6th in the table in real life, but say for just as a general example, they've won half the games, they've lost half the games. They're actually where they're supposed to be. The points total is that is, injuries are all the same, and basically you start from that exact moment as it's supposed to be, because I think that's sort of an extension of what they're trying to do here. So yeah, that's one thing I'm interested in, to see how that works. Set pieces I think could be interesting, simply because for me set pieces was always a bit of a dull thing to look at, and I was never really someone that used them a lot. I know that's kind of a sin in draft mode when you're playing other people, but again, I've never really been one to really use them. But with the interface and how it looks, like it might be a bit more interesting, and then set piece coaches coming in, I think is definitely something that will help with that. And then the other thing, I think that it's a smaller thing for me, but it's that coaches going up and down and seeing their sort of progression or decline as time goes on, which I think when you're doing sort of long-term sort of non-league to legend or journeyman saves, if you get sort of people following you around, it'll be cool to have that comparison of seeing where they were at the start and then seeing them sort of 5 years into their development, if they've done like a load of badges or come up from like national north or south and gone all the way to the Premier League with you, how they've developed. Because you don't really get that, I suppose, in FM unless you're paying specific attention to it, but seeing sort of the ups and downs like the players will be pretty cool to see as well. But yeah, I'm a nerd basically when it comes to that stuff, so yeah, just seeing those little intricacies is pretty cool to me.
I think they're going to be really big ones, that they're kind of high up on my list as well. I think stuff that's really small, like the 3 different starting options, which I think are real world, your world, and original. It's a small feature, but like it will make such a radical difference whether you're choosing And I know I think you're a Man United fan. You end up doing a rebuild of Man United every FM at this rate. But like, to be able to say, okay, am I going to start with the start of the season, all the players already moved to the club, but we're starting at the start of the season, or am I going to start where the signings we make on deadline day will arrive on deadline day, or am I going to start with a complete reset and I can just like hit the reset button on this dreadful summer window? And you didn't used to be able to do that. If you wanted to start as Manchester United in the summer of 23, you had to start having already signed Onana and that kind of thing. Like you didn't have that option. And if you think about that, like that ability to customize how you set up your save, it's like what they say in a lot of strategy games, like your first few turns are the most important. That'll completely change the trajectory of your save. It's just a tiny feature, but like it will make a huge difference potentially if you choose, like how you choose to set your save up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, talk about Man United. I probably won't sign Onana and I probably won't sign Mount, and that's like 100 million of cash right there that's not being spent. So potentially getting that back could make or break a save again. So yeah, it's definitely interested to see how it works, and I think we'll see some beta saves that come out probably from the likes of maybe Benji and people like that, where they might use that sort of thing and show you the intricacies of it and how it works. But I actually think you might get a lot more experiment videos with things like that, which will be interesting to see how that works as well. Just looking at it from a sort of content point of view, but yeah, it'll be fun.
So as we wrap up, what is your content plan? Where can, if the people, they've heard your beautiful thoughts on Football Manager, but they might think, this Grimmy, what has he got planned and what can I watch and where can I watch it? Are you able to share any of that with us?
Yeah, so at this moment in time, I am trying to make my mind up about my beta save, because I almost went too early last year on Leon, and Leon was my FM23 beta save, and they're doing terribly this year, and it would have been a really good save to have. So I'm going to have to not repeat myself and go for something different.
You got sacked. You could always do it again.
Yeah, I did get sacked, so it could be like a redemption arc. But with how they're performing, I don't know if I'll be able to turn that round. But yeah, the Saint Grimmy YouTube channel, I suppose, is what I should say. That'll be where I do all my FM stuff. There will be a full save on there when the full game releases, and there'll be a beta save as well. I'm looking to try and do a bit more experiments, so there'll be something a little bit different there. In terms of streaming, I'd like to say there's going to be a stream save, but again, I've really been sort of focused on YouTube, so it's kind of hard to tell at this point. But I'm hoping that I can get at least 1 or 2 nights a week where I can stream. If it's not going to be a proper save, it'll definitely be a network save of some kind. So yeah, that'll be where to keep an eye out for. But yeah, I do need to decide on my beta save, because it'll be here before I know it, and then I'll have to just click a random team and go for it, basically. Have you got anything lined up in terms of beta save yet? Have you got the club sorted out yet, or are you still making your mind up?
So I know what my main save's going to be, but it will require a little bit of setting up. So that's going to be like, I can't leave Yorkshire or sign players from out of Yorkshire.
Right.
Probably going to start with York and do like a Road to Glory / build a nation within a nation thing. But I'm going to use the pre-game editor to make Yorkshire nationality a thing, so that it's easier to find players and more interesting. That will probably, I don't know how long it's going to take to assign Yorkshire second nationality to loads of players and change all of the football clubs to be, change all. So I'm kind of planning, I think what I'm going to end up doing is a really short beta, and then another beta that's a couple of seasons. So I think what I'll end up doing is probably, I'm tempted to do a season with Napoli, because I never do a big club, and I kind of just want to manage Osimhen and see if Napoli can retain the Serie A title. So I might do a season with them, and then I'm thinking possibly I might do a few seasons either trying to fix the complete mess at FC Basel, or there is a club I've got a bit of a soft spot for that's just been promoted into the bottom playable league of Switzerland and is probably going to get relegated. So I could do maybe trying to save them from relegation. Those are probably going to be my beta saves, and then that gives me enough time to prepare for the proper save. Because then, of course, potentially, we haven't had confirmation of this, but potentially, if I take a bit longer to set up my main save, I could maybe carry that over into FM25 if that feature is also a thing. If you could carry from 23 to 24, maybe I can carry that to 25. So it takes the pressure off. So that's my plan.
Definitely. No, it sounds exciting. And again, I'm at that. I wasn't maybe a couple of weeks ago at that point, but I think I've got to that point over the past few days, looking at the features and seeing everything, where I've got at that time of year now where I'm excited to see and get hold of 24 in the next couple of weeks when the beta comes out. So yeah, the excitement's starting to build again.
Beautiful. And before we go, is there anything else you want to plug other than the St. Grimmy YouTube channel?
No, not really. I would say if you're a listener of this podcast, you probably are aware of JM, but go check out his Twitch streams. They're always a good place to hang out and just look at FM and see what disaster of a save he's got going on at the time. So yeah, go check out JM.
Thank you. That's very kind. And we'll put links to Grimmy stuff in the description. But thank you so much for joining me.
No problem. Thanks very much for having me.
So there we have it, the bumper FM24 features episode. And as of recording this, FM24 is very much out. It's not out officially, it's the early access. But we'll have a lot more thoughts on the direction of FM24 and how people are finding those features, what experiments they are running, what saves they're doing, and how they're making it a little bit different approaches to the game. Hopefully you'll be sticking around for that. This is episode 11, which means we've got through 10 episodes. And not only that, we've got through over 500 listens. So thank you so much to everybody who's enjoying the podcast. I really do appreciate it. And thank you very much to St. Grimmy. It's been fantastic to collaborate with him on this episode. He's a great guy. And do check out his YouTube stuff if you are interested in that sort of thing. He's a man of the community. He's in and around, and a good football manager friend of mine. So big fan of Grimmy coming on and chatting all things video games. But until next time, I wish you a wonderful week. And that's it. That's FM Thoughts. That's my thoughts. JM Thoughts. So many thoughts. Go well, friends. Have a wonderful week. Goodbye.